anyone who follows the U.S. now with the political situation that's going on today, that there's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to funded programs, especially when it comes to aid, right? Whether that's foreign aid or even domestic aid programs, that in the industry that we're serving today, which is the Hunger Relief Organization, right? They're even more worried about where their money's going to come from. And so if that grant funding source gets cut off, and what we heard from many food banks is that since the pandemic, they've been spending 3 to 400x more on purchasing food because they're not getting as much donations.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Grow It podcast. One of your hosts here, Trey King. And today we are very excited to have our guest, Mr. Kevin Lyons from FoodBridge. And as you guys know, this podcast is where thought leaders come to talk about their niche expertise. So today we'll be diving into his story a bit, as well as what it is his company does. So make sure to stick around for this one. But without further ado, Kevin, thanks for hopping on.
Thanks, Treg. Nice to be here. Appreciate the time.
Kevin, if we can kick things off, if you could kindly just to, provide us just a bit of an intro on your side, as well as, tell us a bit about your background.
Yeah, so Kevin Lyons, I am currently the president and managing director for FoodBridge, and that is a solution that our company has built for food banks and food pantries, anyone in the Hunger Relief Organization, which serves as a commerce engine as well as conversational AI for operational efficiencies and to engage more neighbors that are food insecure. And so my background is uh, close to 30 years. I hate to say that in retail and certain leadership positions. So I've worked for brands like Best Buy and Sears and others on the retail side, as well as was a chief strategy officer for a consulting company that predominantly worked in the digital transformation space. So things around digital strategy and as well as implementations and integrations with technology platforms for our clients.
Would you agree if I say that you've been around the block? Would that
I think I've
be
been
accurate?
around the block, the city, probably a country or two. Yes. As they
I
like to
agree.
say these days, I'm a seasoned veteran, right? So
Oh, is that, yeah, that's
that's
the
how you
that's that's the
title it.
right lingo. Right. Tell me, Kevin, talking a bit around the business, the company, uh, what what problems would you say are solved or desired outcome does your company from a product service point of view deliver to your clients?
Yeah, so I think that first we started with trying to define a problem that we happened on accident. So when I was with Blue Sky and one of our clients was um, showing us a new location, and they were in the food business, and they had built a shop right in front of a Walmart, and which we thought was odd because you can get anything at Walmart, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so here we are, in front of a Walmart, and he's telling us, he said, "Well, we choose our locations a lot based on SNAP, and tell us a little bit more about SNAP." And it's the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It's sponsored by the federal government. It is assistance for food insecure neighbors who qualify. They get a stipend each month that they have to use for food. So they can't just take it to a restaurant. It's not for prepared meals, but
Right.
I can buy groceries with it. I can buy things like donuts or coffee or those types of things like that are non-prepared foods.
Right.
Um, and it struck us as interesting, and we started to dig into the program a little bit more and find that there are a lot of convenience stores who build their whole model, their P&L around
Yeah.
SNAP because neighbors have to use that
Oh,
money
word.
every month. So if they don't use that money, typically what they'll do is try to use it wherever it's convenient to them. And remember, a lot of the food insecure people don't have access to go to a grocery store like you and I do to
Right.
even to do curbside pickup. There's
Yeah.
a stigma around the SNAP program because it used to be in the old days, they used to call it food stamps, and it was actual stamps, and you
Yeah.
broke them off, right? And that's how you paid. It was almost tendered like cash.
Exactly.
Well, now they're all
Correct.
kind of electronic debit cards, right? They have a PIN associated with them. And so there's a stigma around that. But we want food insecure neighbors to enjoy the same conveniences you and I have when we go to a grocery store. I choose pickup, I can choose delivery, etc. Now, SNAP doesn't cover fees surrounded by that, and that's why food banks and pantries are so well situated to serve neighbors because they're already doing that with the food that they get donated or they have to purchase these days to actually reach their neighbors, right? They
Yeah.
usually, if you've ever volunteered at a food bank or a food offering, right, they box a lot of things up typically for healthy staples, and then they
Right.
hand those out to neighbors. And so food banks and pantries have been doing that forever. And food insecure neighbors have been willing to go there because they know that they're going to get the nutritious food that they need. They might get other assistance that they need. And so our ability to connect that, which is you don't have to pay for delivery or pickup, you could enjoy that same free food that you're getting alongside food that the food bank or pantry could sell and take
Yeah.
advantage of programs like SNAP, et cetera, right? All in the same cart because we have two payment processors, one that handles free and one that handles paid food. You can get them all together. Now, the trick is how do I engage neighbors to let them know that these programs are there? And that's where the conversational
Access.
AI component of that comes in because
Yeah.
many of our neighbors do not have access to a computer, to high-speed internet. So they just have this, right?
Yeah.
And the power of this is what we have put our platform in so that it can operate just like any fully functioning website. But if you choose to operate via text and you just want to text for assistance, I want to pre-qualify for SNAP or other food programs. I want to understand kind of what are some healthy recipes with the food that I did get from the food bank or the food pantry. How could I coordinate my delivery or on pickup experience all through the power of text messaging? You don't even need access to a browser, right, in order to do that. Now,
Gee.
there are certain limitations when you don't have the browser, but you're still getting that engagement. So the
Yes.
benefit to the neighbor is that they're getting access to food, just like you and I would have from a grocery store, but they're getting it, they know they're getting healthy food. And from a food bank and food pantry perspective, they are able to reach more neighbors that they couldn't do otherwise. They have a very limited staff. And so what we've heard, Trey, over time with interviewing a lot of these food banks and pantries is sometimes it's upwards of an hour that they one phone call to qualify a neighbor for assistance, whether that's the emergency food assistance program, SNAP, et cetera. Our
Yeah.
conversational AI, where we work with the food banks and pantries to go through that predetermined flow, because some of the qualifications are different per state, then we can build those in. The AI bot basically understands with over 300 different languages to provide the assistance they need to get them pre-qualified. And now that hour-long phone call takes a matter of minutes. Now you can imagine with the limited staff that frees them up to do lots of
Yes.
things to support
Yeah.
more neighbors, right? They can
It's a
help
lot.
load cars, they can load boxes and get them ready.
Yeah.
They can go out and do outreach programs, et cetera, in person, attend farmers markets, et cetera. All of those things there before, they were probably stuck behind a desk just taking care of some of these things, right? And so if you think of customer service, the ability to process orders, to be able to coordinate benefits, et cetera, we can do that all with our platform. And so
Yes.
we found that need or that problem, which was the problem with food insecure neighbors and closing food deserts across the country. Even in the US, we have food deserts all over this country where people don't have access to healthy, nutritious food. And that's where the food banks and the pantries certainly can meet that need and now can have the technology to do that more efficiently and grow their mission, which is basically to reach as many neighbors under their purvey
Yes.
as they can.
I mean, this solution of you guys, I mean, just the reach now that people will be able to receive. I mean, that's so profound. Kevin, tell me the can you possibly give an example? You don't have to give the client's name. Give an example of where you guys have implemented and like a big shift that came into their
Yeah.
the foundation or organization for that matter.
Yeah, so the commerce platform's still relatively new, and we're working on some proof of concepts with some state partners across the U.S. However, we have implemented um, the solution from a conversational AI perspective in a few food banks already. And
All
some of
right.
the things that we're hearing are pretty phenomenal, actually. When you look at just from an operational savings, remember I said that there are a lot of these employees, um, they have to make a decision about what programs they're going to support, how many neighbors can they get to in a day, which takes them away from other things probably the food bank has to do. So in
Right.
one food bank over the course of a year, they were able to realize $1.3 million in savings. So you can imagine with a nonprofit and their ability to go out and fundraise and do all the things they have to do in order to support programs, they can now put the power in their own hands by generating revenue, right? Even though they're a 501(c)(3), to
Yeah.
pay for those programs and support their communities where they operate without the constant treadmill of going after the same donors, waiting on grants to come
Exhausting.
through, et cetera. They can create that sustainable environment. The other thing that they see is a high response rate. So we have neighbors that are in their 90s that are interacting with us because we've made it friendly for text messaging.
That's awesome.
Right? Because if you think about, your mom or dad or your grandparents or whoever, and you think, oh, well, they would never use this technology. Well, we have a lot of average users because what happened during the pandemic is it forced a lot of those folks to learn that technology so they could stay in connection with their families, right? And because that's
Right.
the only way they were doing it. So
Good point.
now a higher comfort level with that platform, and then the ability for us to rate the value of that interaction by giving them a rating system, a quick survey at the end, and we're getting better than 90 to 95% of a five-star rating through that system interacting over what they were doing where they were waiting for sometimes a long time on the phone because we have limited staff to get questions answered or know what resources were available to them.
Yeah. That is so profound. The if we can maybe take a step back on obviously talking about more on the business itself. Now, obviously, yeah, I mean we spoke about you've been around the block and around the city and around the country. Uh, you know, building a business up to and you've done it previously at many places and obviously this one you're building now. Um, you know, the road's not always rosy and there's always the challenges that comes with that of growing a business, right? Can you possibly provide maybe one or two examples of where you guys had like maybe some barriers or glass ceiling that you guys have reached certain stages to say, okay, what we've got some growth problems here, this is what we need to do. Just an example of a problem or two and then what you guys did to get through it.
Yeah, I think that with FoodBridge, you run into a lot of obstacles when you're dealing with any nonprofit who does not have the knowledge or the capacity of what technology always can do for them, right? They may
Right.
brush up on it. They're a very network society, meaning other food banks talk to other food banks across the country. There are some national organizations that have member food banks and pantries under their purvey, like a Feeding America has over 200 locations across the country. They have conferences, et cetera, where they all get together. So they learn some best practices from other folks. But once you're in it day to day and individual, one of the obstacles you have to overcome is just to get their head around what is possible. The
Right.
other part is that the food banking model has not changed that much over the, you know, 50 years.
Right.
And and so it's been I gotta, do fundraising campaigns or do events and raise money, think about planning, strategic planning my programs that I'm going to support for the upcoming year, which ones I'm going to continue from last year, which ones do we want to fund that are brand new, because they're always coming up with new ways to serve neighbors, right? or how can I extend my touch reach, as I like to call it, right? It's not just the fact that I can make people aware of my food bank or pantry across the radius I serve, but one-to-one engagement at scale is very hard to do. And that's where you try to convince them that, right, this technology is going to unlock potential that probably would take you another decade to get to. By the fact that if I'm starting to see an income come in and I don't have to spend as much time with fundraising and donors and all of that type of stuff, then I can start to better uh, to be more agile in my strategic planning because as I'm starting to realize the benefits throughout the year, even though I've made my plans in the beginning of the year, I might be able to pivot and say, you know what, we have room to add another program, or
Right.
we want to get a small
Function.
church-based pantry as part of our solution, and they don't have assets like cold storage, et cetera. And so now they can help fund that, right? They can sponsor that, or they can create grants for their communities, et cetera. Or they can just extend their delivery and pickup reach of their food that they're giving away or selling because now they have the capability to do that on their own. They don't have to wait to see what they're going to get in donations, et cetera. And a
That's
lot of
exceptional.
times they're not in the business like what I came from, right? As being in retail, where you're used to saying, okay, well, how can we create efficiencies in our warehouse? And how can we think about our pick, pack, and ship process? How can we think about our customer service model and make it more efficient? Those are things they don't deal with on a day-to-day basis that you might when you're in a for-profit business. So we spend our time as part of it, right? We don't charge an additional fee for offering those services. Is like, let's help you make this operational, right?
Yeah.
If we can tie this to your backend systems that you already have, or if you don't have them, you can use our platform to support those basic needs like inventory management, customer management, et cetera. And so that's really the barrier you have to get over first, is just the fact that they're not used to doing that. And I
So
think
yeah,
my years of being in the consulting space and working with leaders who maybe not as familiar, that's why they hire e-commerce experts or digital experts, because they're not
right.
experts at it, is really it forces you to try to explain new technology at really a basic way that people can understand, right? Think about it as if, you know, if I have a kid, I had two kids in Boy Scouts years ago, right? They're almost 20 now, but they sold popcorn as part of their fundraising program every year.
Yeah.
And so I use the equivalent of a website is to say that if I'm selling popcorn, I send out a blast email and say, I'm selling popcorn. Well, that's the equivalent of just posting your URL out there and having hoping people show up, right?
Well
But then
spot.
then I get into now here's the popcorn I actually have to sell,
Yeah.
gets into product listing pages, et cetera, where I can see your catalog of assortment, right? If I
Yeah.
know that I bought a lot of a certain thing or I'm not selling something very well and I need to promote it, the equivalent of that is like, I've got cheddar popcorn, I've got a lot of it, and it's on sale this week, kind of thing. That's like getting them to the product detail page, right? And then getting them to convert. People that aren't in it every day need it broken down in those terms because a lot of times, and I'm guilty of this myself, being in the space as long as I've been in the e-commerce space since 2008, 2009,
Yeah.
that you get very comfortable just speaking in your own language and people, it kind of goes over people's heads. And then it's like, if it's too complicated, I may not digest it. So
Right.
spend the
So
time, the extra time to make it simple, right? And
so the educational part of that is actually like a a big part of obviously for the success of this. And like you mentioned, for lack of a better word, to start off with basics and then
yeah,
to build up the functionality from there. Once they've got a grasp on it and moving forward. So no, thank you for enlightening with that. That's very interesting, very interesting. Tell me, from a market trend point of view in your current space, what ways are the winds blowing these days? What's new? What's happening?
well, I think that anyone who follows the U.S. now with, the political situation that's going on today, that there's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to funded programs, especially when it comes to aid, right? Whether that's foreign aid or even domestic aid programs, that in the industry that we're serving today, which is the Hunger Relief Organization, right? They're even more worried about where their money's going to come from. And so if that grant funding source gets cut off, and I have to, what we heard from many food banks is that since the pandemic, they've been spending 300 to 400x more on purchasing food because they're not getting as much from donations or grant allotments, et cetera, to go out and get that food. So they're dipping into their own P&L, if you will, to
Okay.
go purchase more food. So what
Yes.
better way for them to be able to capitalize on that by having their own revenue stream to offset some of those costs, right? Or adding a mobile delivery truck or those types of things. That's what we're seeing a lot of today, that food banks and really innovative pantries are trying to find a way to get closer to the neighbor. And so
Right.
many of them are looking at things that they never looked at before, like mobile food delivery, right? Or cold food storage, or a fast pick warehouse where they can provide orders, much like you and I would enjoy at a grocery store right today.
Right.
They've not been set up that way. We also see a lot of them trying to keep up with the regulations and rule changes that happen with any of these aid programs. And so, with something like AI, if you can continually to update and make those modifications, it's
Yeah.
less time that that person needs to get trained on what's new because we
Yes.
can just update the bot basically to support that and answer 95 to 99% of the questions that get answered without actually talking to an adult, right? Or a volunteer. But if they choose to do that, they can do that, right? We don't want to take away that human element, but what we want to do is make sure that we can provide more efficiency. And that's really what food banks are going under and food pantries today is one, how do I remain sustainable? And two is how do I think about getting closer to the neighbor to improve my awareness and access to healthy food?
Right. Then a bit on the lighter side of things. I mean, you've I've been trying to remember all these places that you've worked at before of companies, right? And I wanted to actually ask you right from the beginning, is that what is it about what you do that, that how did you like get into it that spark came on what you're doing now? Or, what is it that why you enjoy what you're doing so much? Because it's interesting to me. And I thought I need to ask you where did this come from, or or
Yeah.
what is it that you find there's so much joy in what you're doing?
Yeah, I think that um, what's always drawn me, and I think it goes back to like, kind of Simon Sinek, what is your why? Try to define your purpose wherever you are, right? And most people they join organizations or start organizations for a reason. And it could be that their values align to the individual, so the company values align to my values.
Mm.
Or if nothing exists today, like how can we create something that is not just a brand that makes money, but it's also a brand that does good for good. And that could be lots of different things. You think of, um, you know, Tom's Shoes, right? Was one of the first in the retail space where they had a one-for-one program, right? With you buy a pair of shoes and they donate a pair of shoes to kids in need. I
Yeah.
was fortunate to be a part of a company similar to that as president, where I ran, and it was basically a home shopping network and an e-commerce channel, and we were selling what I'll call guilty pleasure items. They were jewelry, right? Lifestyle goods. You can think of most home shopping networks or e-commerce sites in those types of spaces. And
Right.
so we basically took that same concept and said, can we make people feel better about their guilty pleasure by saying, hey, if you purchase something from us, we're going to give something to someone, right? And so our program was very similar in that way, where we donated a hot meal to children in need for midday school programs in India as well as the UK. Um, and the brand sentiment. We had just rebranded the company. I'd led the rebrand effort, and then we started this give back
Yeah.
opportunity, and our customer acquisition went through the roof because even those people who were casual viewers or visitors to our website now saw like I don't feel so bad about spending money on those types of things for myself because I feel like I'm doing something good for someone else. And so I think that's always been on my back burner of saying, like, if I think of a balanced scorecard in an organization, community impact always has to be on that balanced scorecard somewhere, right? What am I doing to give back to the communities that I serve? And that could be simple. It could be things like I've got a social activities committee that does certain things or events, right? From my corporate office. I volunteer and go to food banks, or I go to, different events, right? Or Big Brothers, Big Sisters, or
Yeah.
volunteer my time. Well, now I think that this desire, especially with millennials and younger folks, they're connected more with people who are doing something to make a difference than they are just
Okay.
to get a deal, right? Or get a product. And so that applies that kind of full circle when it comes to things like FoodBridge is to say that how did we take, at the consulting agency that I was at, where we implemented and integrated very complex enterprise level commerce platforms and surrounding technologies like AI. Uh,
Yes.
how do you bring that to the organizations that are already doing good and make them use our expertise to help them extend their reach? So
Right.
that full circle of way back of I was just trying to get conversion and people to buy is now like,
Yeah.
how can I get more customers? Because everybody is less loyal than they were years ago to any brand. So how do
Right.
I create stickiness? And
Mm.
then I have the ability now to take all of that and apply it to brands and organizations that are already doing good. And they can see what the art of the possible is for a lot of these commercial industries that have been doing this for many years.
This has been so interesting, Kevin. I want to thank you for that you're willing to share your knowledge and then explaining, what is this big operations you guys are busy with. It is so fascinating and it's so good to hear that there are these types of technologies and things available now to make sure that these organizations and funds and people involved can move forward as well. So I mean just the value that I got to hear from you today. I can fully understand why you guys are definitely on the up and making the difference that you guys are doing. So no, I definitely commend you guys for that, and would really like to thank you for coming on. Before I let you go, tell me, Kevin, where can the listeners, if they want to get in touch with you guys, how can they go about doing so?
Sure. So they can check out our website, which is myfoodbridge.com. We have a lot of great videos, a webinar when we launched the platform, a lot of great material, or you can schedule some time with me if you know of a food bank or pantry that you think would need a technology like this. We're happy to discuss as well as they can text us, and we certainly can provide that. But if you using the conversational AI, they can text FBD to 317-674-8206, and that will give them some information if you're interested in being a part of the program. And again, we're happy to spend any kind of time that we can with other folks or introduce them to partners if we can't, right? That's the other thing too, is we try
Right.
not to be everything, but there are a lot of people trying to solve all of these problems, and we've got a pretty good network of folks to support them.
Excellent. Kevin, thanks for hopping on. This was fun.
Yes, thanks. It was great again to have the time. I appreciate the opportunity and wish you all the best.
Thank you. Take it.
All right, bye.